Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you here this morning. We'd like to welcome our veterans and honor them this day. Mayor Scal, Reed Curl, and other dignitaries, we welcome. I have one announcement. At the conclusion of our service today, we would request that you walk to the cenotaph because of the limitation of parking. We'll ask Brother Rod Beezer of the Calgary West State to offer an invocation. Brother Beezer.
Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the many blessings that we enjoy in this wonderful area of the world, where we are free to go about and do things that we wish to do. We're grateful for the service and sacrifice of so many good people that we can enjoy these things. We pray that Thou will bless the proceedings of this meeting, bless those who participate. We're grateful for all that we enjoy in this great country of Canada, for the opportunities we have to learn and to grow and to pursue the things which we want to do. We pray that Thou will bless those in countries who struggle and have war and unrest, and appreciate all those who continue to serve and to protect and help those who are in conflict. We are grateful for the sacrifice of Thy Son, and grateful for the blessings that come to us through that. And pray that we'll be always mindful of the things that we enjoy. And pray for Thy blessings in all that we do. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Our Canadian soldiers have fought in several wars. The first war was the Boer War in 1899-1902, and about 300 of our soldiers gave the ultimate sacrifice. The Great War of 1914 and 1918, there's about 67,000 Canadians that gave the sacrifice. The Second World War, 1939 to 1945, about 45,000. The Korean War, 1950-1951, about 500. And then for the past 10 years, we've had the Afghanistan War, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 to 150 of our soldiers gave their sacrifice. I think war has touched most of us. I remember one experience as a youth. On a bright Sunday morning, the year I don't remember, 1943, 1944. I was taking the cow to the pasture, and an airplane flew over my head, not very high. We had a training school at Lethbridge, bombing and gunnery school. And as this plane flew west, I watched it. And I got just north of the Welling Highway, and it went up in the air a long ways, stalled, and spiraled in. The next thing I could see was the smoke from the crash. The other thing that I remember, I used to audit the Legions in Calgary, and at the end of their ceremony, they had a dialogue they went through, and I can't remember the whole dialogue, but the last line was this: "We will remember them." And then the audience would say those words. So you would please say those words. We will remember them. We had numerous airfields in southern Alberta during the war. And the reason they were here is because of the number of daylight hours and the good weather for training. There are little towns like Pierce, DeWinton, Terrace-Home, Champion, Lethbridge, and others had training flights here. We'll continue our service by the choir singing Guardians of a Dream. Mayor Scal will give us his welcome. The high school band will play the King's Fold March, after which Mayor Scout will introduce our speakers.
Linda, Lori, Colleen, thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, did you listen to the words that they sang? And the beauty of the message goes right here to their hearts. And likewise, the beauty of those messages will go into our hearts if we're receptive. This is an amazing sight this morning. I wish you could stand here and see what an amazing sight this is. I'm really pleased that the decision was made in spite of the short walk, longer walk to the cenotaph. I'm really pleased that we are here in this more than adequate facility. And I'm really pleased for those of you that came. I'm excited to be here. I feel honored. I don't know why I feel honored, because I haven't done anything that's that important. Honored veterans, men and women in uniform, who have protected or who yet protect our streets, our homes, and our borders. Thank you so very much for what you do. And yes, may we never, ever forget what you have done and what you do. Special guests, friends and neighbors. This is my 4th year standing and giving you greetings from the town of Cardston Mayor and Council. And it just gets better and better every year because you get better and better every year. I was thinking that I perform better when I prepare my remarks in the script, but I'm convinced today that had I prepared some welcome remarks, I would have left them in my pocket because there's so many other things that I felt in my heart that I wanted to say to you wonderful people in this wonderful community that we love. I'm excited because I want to see the 20-minute video that's been prepared. I'm excited because of the speakers that we will listen to. And so I will just issue you the challenge. As good as you are, as good as you have been, will you try with me to be better citizens, better friends and neighbors? Will you try with me to make a better community even better, more friendly, more thoughtful and considerate of one another, of our neighbors, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of station in life? Will you make the commitment with me today to be better at how we cherish and value the freedoms that those who made the ultimate sacrifice have given us? I can't listen to the words of that choir without realizing that they are an award-winning choir, and we have an award-winning band, reflective of the standard of talent and dedication and commitment and quality of people in this community, your forebears, you and your children and your grandchildren and generations to come. And for that, for who you are and for who you continue to be, and I know that with me we can be better. And I give you my personal greetings, and again on behalf of the town of Cardston, thank you so very much for being here today. this next part of our program is what makes me so excited. Last evening, a handful of us with spouses were able to spend some time with these folks, and I'm going to introduce them. And lots of people, knowing me well enough, remind me, Rick, less you say the better. And so that's kind of what's going to happen right now. Probably, to be honest, because I don't know what to say any more than what is on your program. But the Curl name is a well-known name for generations here in Cardston. And today we have the distinct honor to listen to, as our Remembrance Day guest speaker, World War II retired flight officer Harold Curl. And as long as I can remember, and I've been around, I've lost kind of count how long I've been around, but there's people that remind me, so it doesn't matter that I forgot, they just remind me. I'm excited to see this video that's been done by the two gentlemen that will follow Harold Curl. But and lots that you are going to want to know will be contained in the video. There's been a tremendous amount of research going into it. The quality of the production is just excellent. So I'd like to call up to the podium today for our honored Remembrance Day speaker, World War II retired flight officer, Mr. Harold Curl.
Brother, this is a spontaneous, beautiful group of people, from young and old, some almost as old as I am. But to hear the music that was played, the music that was sung, the young men, the older men that marched in here with ribbons on, made me realize how important this is to remember. And I do remember having gone to similar activities like this before. Before you are some examples of Mozart, and I think it'd be well for me to tell you a little bit about them. One is the collage of a Halifax bomber that I used to fly on the squadron, 432 Squadron in England, near York, England. And I won't tell you more other than I flew it on the 8th of March of 45, and it was damaged quite badly, and I was shot up a little by one parachute strap only, but the shell went out the side of the aircraft. And it happened so fast I hardly knew it, but my crew knew it when they saw the hole in the aircraft. And then they repaired it the following day. Now that's Willie the Wolf. The reason it's called Willie the Wolf is because of the nose art that's painted on the aircraft by ground crew personnel that identifies it. Next to it is nose art of my brother Eldon. He had it on his aircraft, P for Peter, but he was shot down over Berlin on January 27th, 1944. And I was then flying about to get my wings and flares home at the time. So you see, you have good examples of nose art that we have here. And as told this day about the people who sacrificed during the many wars, from Boer War and to the Afghanistan war most recently, it's interesting to note that 117,000 men and women lost their lives in those wars. And then how do we honor them? I think we honor them by remembering them. If the loss of life is a debt that can never be repaid, it is a debt never to be forgotten. And that's why we're here, never to forget. There's a Russian proverb that says this: live in the past and lose, forget the past and lose. Today we've got the past to the present, it's up to us to make use of the experiences of the people of the past. Today is the day to do that. And so we're here to experience what Remembrance Day brings to us. And I was very proud to see these young and old men, as I mentioned, and the girls and boys march in here today with ribbons on, proudly. And they remember, and they teach us as we are teaching them. Now, time it will not permit me to say more, but the COAS that's before you, I got it in a place called Elvington, a free French airplane near York in 1990. It was made by a man by the name of Gerald Innes, the young Englishman that Marilyn and I met in England in 1976, and we kept in touch with him. And when we went over there in 1990, he had this collage ready to present to us in a big circus-type tent at that reunion. And I brought back an Air Canada aircraft, and when the pilot saw this, he said, I'll put that in the pilot's compartment. And he flew it on the cavalry, and we came with him. Now, more recently, a man made in those art all this doodle-bug riding a bomb to Earth, which was on the nose of Eldon's aircraft. And so you have these two examples here before you today. So when the COAS came back to Calgary, we put it in our den for 20 years, and many people saw it. We took it out on Remembrance Days, such as this, in schools in Calgary, East Carl, Western Canada High School, and other places, and students saw it and learned from it. And so it's here for you today. Now in 1992, we were in Berlin, Marilyn and I. We went to what is left of the Berlin Wall. There's about 200 yards left, and one end of that wall is a gate called Checkpoint Charlie, where those people were allowed under supervision to come from the east or west in the wall. Those who come over the wall were shot. Near that was Brandenburg Gate, a famous gate in Berlin. It was damaged but rebuilt. The transportation system was updated. We took a bus on August the 1st, 1992, from Berlin to Charlottenburg Cemetery on the west side of Berlin. And there were some 3,500 veterans buried. 750 were airmen. One was my brother Eldon, and only 3 of his crew were buried there. We met at the gate by a caretaker. We took us to their graveside. He brought flowers to us, and I'd taken the Canadian flag with me. We took pictures of that day in Berlin. And as we knelt in silent meditation, it seemed to me that they would say to us, if they could speak, I want to live. I want to do what I can do. I want to be what I can be. I want to live. That could have been Eldon speaking. So when we left that day, we had a great deal to remember on our visit to Berlin. And so you see today, veterans are spread throughout the world, doing their duty, bringing peace back to Canada, which you value, and by your services, the music, and that has been presented today, we value what you do in Cardston. And on this Remembrance Day, it's not only yours, it's mine also, coming home. Thank you very much.
As I recall from the discussion last night over dinner with our 2 guest speakers, Donald Smith and Robert Curtin, they actually met quite by chance, if I remember correctly. And it didn't take them long to realize that there was some destiny here, some synergy here that was going to do some wonderful things. And we're just about ready to watch this video, this 20-minute video. But let me introduce to you these two gentlemen. Ronald Smith is a native of the Maritimes and currently residing in the Halifax area, Liverpool in Nova Scotia. And as you can see from your program, the producer, writer, and the closer I get to this film, the more excited I get. So I want to introduce to you Mr. Donald Smith, and he'll give a few of his remarks, and he's prepared some remarks for us to give us a little bit of a background on this work that they've completed. And then following him, I don't need to get up again, following him, Robert Curtin is the director of the production. Robert is formerly of Toronto, now resides in Calgary, and I'm just going to let their work speak for themselves, but in the meantime, I'd like to hear just a few words from Donald Smith and then from Robert, if you would, gentlemen. Then after Robert has finished his remarks, we'll dim the lights a bit more and watch Brothers in Arms.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests. I never prepare anything to say, so I never have to worry about forgetting where I am in my own program, which is a blessing. It's such a pleasure to be here in Cardston. Robert and I have looked forward to this moment, to this day to be here with you on Remembrance Day. Robert and I have both lost family members in war. Remembrance Day is very dear to us, very close to us. To this day, I have a brother who's a major in the Army, fighting with the British forces in Afghanistan, so it's very close. We met Harold at the Air Force Museum in Calgary after Robert and I had done a film on No. 6 Bomber Group, which was the Royal Canadian Air Force group that served in the Second World War. And Harold started to tell me the story about his brother Eldon. And then he made the connection between himself and Eldon. And there I was with this most amazing story of two brothers from Cardston. And when we started to research, the first place I looked was at your cenotaph. And two things struck me. First of all, the number of people from Cardston, an area who died in the Second World War, is almost 3 times greater than those who died in the First World War, which is almost an anomaly compared to most communities. And when I looked closer, 60% of those who died in the Second World War were airmen. And down in the Maritimes, we hear so much about how during the war, the Navy was made up of boys from the prairies. Well, here was a whole group of boys who flew with the Air Force and died serving with the Air Force. Robert and I spent many days, I won't say we were locked in Harold and Marilyn's basement, but we were down there. And going through photo albums and letters and documents and everything we could get our hands on to put together this story. As an historian and as a writer, I found myself having to put myself back in the place of those that are writing about. What was Eldon Curl thinking? What was his crew thinking? What was Harold thinking when he did what he did for his brother, for his family? And it's such an emotional story for me personally and for Robert when we put this together that, I carry my little clinger. Yesterday, when we did the high school presentation here, I turned to Lloyd Curl and said, Lloyd, I have goosebumps just being here in Cardston where this story originated. Robert spent hours, days, and nights putting together this presentation. It could very easily have been a 4-part mini-series on television. So a lot of what we did is still in the can, as they say. But we're able to boil it down to a 20-minute story on 2 of your own. And this movie plays in the Air Force Museum in Calgary It runs about 20 minutes. About 80,000 people a year go through the military museums where this film is presented. That's 80,000 people who will know of Cardston, who will know of the sacrifice of Cardston, who will know of Eldon and Harold Curl. And it is such a privilege to be here with you to make this presentation and allow you to see our story, as incomplete as it is, of the Curl brothers. We hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. Dawn mentioned that we met and we learned about Harold Curl and Eldon Curl, and I had the opportunity 2 summers ago to come to this town and to begin to do some photography. And I have to be honest with you, I fell in love with this town. It's a marvelous place, and you folks you're lucky to be here. The story of Eldon and Harold is a very touching story, and I believe we do honor for their sacrifice by continuing to tell of their experiences. We have to remember the people that we liberated in Europe will always remember their sacrifice, and we owe it to them to help our children understand. And that's one of the reasons that I'm involved in this. I'm sure that Donald is as well. These folks who made the ultimate sacrifice and perpetuate the story deserve to be remembered. So if we could have the lights down just a touch, I'll try and get this moving.
RAF Bomber Command began a series of offensive operations against Berlin. Sir Arthur Harris, Air Officer Commanding Bomber Command, told Winston Churchill that German resistance would be broken by the raids. It will cost us 400 to 500 bombers, he said. It will cost Germany the war. On the night of January 26, 1944, several hundred bombers were dispatched to Berlin, including aircraft of 408 Squadron, 6th Group RCAF, part of RAF Bomber Command. Records for that night indicate 33 Lancasters were lost. One of these aircraft was a Lancaster II of 408 Squadron, EQP serial number DS709, piloted by Flight Lieutenant Eldon Curl of Cardston, Alberta. Located in the low foothills of southwest Alberta, a short distance from the Montana border, Cardston is like many other small Alberta towns. In the center of the town is the cenotaph, erected after the First World War to commemorate those from the Cardston area who died during that terrible conflict. A small bronze plaque was added to the cenotaph to commemorate 50 men from the area who died during the Second World War. Of those who died, 60% were serving in the Royal Canadian Air Force at the time of their deaths. Among the thousands of sons and daughters of Alberta who served in Canada's armed forces during the Second World War, Cardston and surrounding communities provided their fair share. Two of Cardston's own, Eldon Easton Curl and his younger brother Harold Enders Curl, served overseas as bomber pilots. Eldon with 408 Squadron flying the Lancaster Mark II, and Harold with 432 Squadron flying the Handley Page Halifax Mark VII. Harold would eventually return home to his family in Cardston. Eldon would not. This is their story. The Curl family came to southern Alberta from Utah in the early 1900s, where George Curl homesteaded a small ranch near Cardston. Eldon and Harold, two sons of George and Rose Anders Curl, were born, raised, and educated in the community, along with their brothers and sisters. In September 1939, the world was once again at war. Following graduation from high school, Eldon worked as a tailor until mid-1941 when he served in the Army during the summer, only to enlist in the Royal Canadian Air Force in Edmonton on September 5, 1941. Eldon Curl would spend a month at No. 3 Manning Depot in Edmonton before he was transferred to No. 15 Service Flying Training School at Claresholm, not far from his home in Cardston. 1 month later, he moved to No. 7 Initial Training School in Saskatoon for basic training and aircrew selection. On February 2, 1942, Eldon was transferred to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, where he joined No. 6 Elementary Flight Training School. On February 16th, he had his first flight in Tiger Moth No. 4057. Less than 1 month after beginning his flight training, Eldon soloed for the first time.
Got up at 6:30 hours, flew this morning, had my first solo, made 4 attempts to land, landed it on the 4th.
Following his basic flight training, Eldon reported to No. 7 Service Flight Training School at McLeod for flight training on the twin-engine Avro Anson Mark II, a prerequisite for bomber pilots.
Had first solo in Avro Anson, was down over Cardston in an Anson and really shot it up.
On August 1st, 1942, Eldon Curl received his pilot's wings and a promotion to sergeant. In early November of that year, Curl arrived in Halifax, Nova Scotia for transport overseas to England, a trip that would take him by train to St. John, New Brunswick and New York.
The bed on the train was very hard. Arrived in New York. Saw the Empire State Building.
Then on to the liner Queen Elizabeth for a transatlantic crossing.
Left New York this morning. Steamed past the Statue of Liberty and out into the Atlantic Ocean. Followed by enemy subs last night. We ran into heavy seas. The ship was heaving and rolling all night.
Following time at an advanced flying unit, he was transferred to a heavy conversion unit at Leaming, Yorkshire. Within a month, his training completed, Eldon Curl received a commission as an officer and joined 408 Squadron 6 Group RCAF, also at Leaming. 6 weeks later, the squadron moved to Linton-on-Ouse, Yorkshire. Nearly 21 months had passed since Eldon had joined the RCAF. Eldon began flying the Handley Page Halifax on operations over enemy territory almost immediately. Near the end of July 1943, Eldon flew on operations 6 nights out of 7, 4 times against Hamburg. His aircraft was EQP P for Peter. He later flew a Lancaster II with the same squadron code and name when the squadron re-equipped in October 1943. On January 26, 1944, Eldon celebrated his 24th birthday. He and his crew had already completed 17 operations over enemy territory, including a number of raids against Berlin, known to aircrews as the Big City. Lancaster EQP P for Peter lifted off from Linton-on-Ouse just before 6 p.m. to join other aircraft for that night's operation. Canadian squadrons would lose 8 aircraft. 3 would be from 408 Squadron. For Flight Lieutenant Curl and his crew, which included Pilot Officer E.R. Proud, Pilot Officer A.C. Brown, Pilot Officer J.P.D. Varese, Flight Sergeant A. Smith, Pilot Officer J. Adamson, Flight Sergeant J.A. McLean, and Flight Sergeant J.F. McManus. The night of January 26th would be their 18th operation, more than halfway through their tour of operations. The target was once again Berlin.
On course, skipper. 15 seconds.
Is it always like this?
for starboard! Go! I can see him. J-Way. He's turning into us.
Taking evasive action, Flight Lieutenant Curl hoped to lose the attacker in the dark. Cannon and machine gun fire ripped through the fuselage and starboard wing, killing the bomb aimer Flight Sergeant A. Smith. Shrapnel hit the flight engineer, Pilot Officer Alfie Brown, knocking him unconscious. With the two starboard engines on fire, Eldon would have known his aircraft was doomed. His responsibility would be to save his crew.
I can't hold it much longer. We're going down. Everybody out! Now! I'll try to hold her steady. Get out!
During the turmoil and confusion, one of the crew managed to strap a parachute to the still unconscious flight engineer and push him out of the flaming Lancaster. Pilot Officer Alfie Brown would be the only survivor of Eldon Curl's crew. The aircraft came down in the Reichenwald area, approximately 4 kilometers east of Storkow, near the small village of Buck, in what would become the Soviet-occupied zone of East Germany. Flight Lieutenant Eldon Easton Curl died that night on his 24th birthday, along with 6 of his crew. His body and those of 4 others were located and buried near the site of the crash. 3 others would never be found. They would join nearly 10,000 other Canadians who died during the Second World War, serving with Bomber Command of the Royal Air Force. On the day he died, Flight Lieutenant Curl was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation for his award reads, "This officer has completed as pilot and captain of aircraft many successful operations against the enemy, in the course of which he has invariably displayed high skill, fortitude, and devotion to duty." Born on December 10, 1922, nearly 3 years after Eldon, Harold Enders Curl grew up with his family in Cardston. Following graduation from high school, the 19-year-old would follow his brother into the Royal Canadian Air Force, enlisting in October 1942, a little more than a year after his older brother. Harold completed basic training at No. 3 Manning Depot in Edmonton, after which he transferred to No. 5 Elementary Flight Training School at High River, south of Calgary, for basic flight training. From High River, Harold was sent to No. 15 Service Flying Training School at Claresholm, where, like his brother before him, he trained on twin-engine Avro Ansons. 2 weeks before receiving his pilot's wings, Harold learned of the death on operations of his brother, Flight Lieutenant Eldon Easton Curl. Following commando training at Valleyfield, Quebec, Harold Curl left Montreal by train for Halifax, Nova Scotia, from where he went overseas. Following advanced flight training, Harold flew the twin-engine Wellington bomber to gain operational experience, after which his piloting skills were assessed as being above the average. By December, a little more than 2 years since he enlisted, Harold was flying Halifax bombers with No. 1664 Heavy Conversion Unit at Dishforth in Yorkshire. On February 23, 1945, he joined 432 Squadron at Eastmoor, where he flew Halifax Mark 7 aircraft. By the end of the war in Europe, May 8, 1945, Flying Officer Harold Curl had flown 17 operations over enemy territory, the same number as his brother, up to the time of his death over a year earlier. Even though Harold joined his squadron near the end of the war, operations were still dangerous, with aircraft being destroyed and crews lost almost on a nightly basis. On the night of March 22nd, while on operations over Dorston, Harold's aircraft suffered the loss of 1 engine. Rather than turning back, he pressed home his attack on 3 engines at a reduced altitude of 14,000 feet. On March 25th, just 3 nights later over Munster, while flying Halifax QOW Willie the Wolf, Harold's aircraft suffered a near miss from anti-aircraft gunfire. While not a direct hit, a piece of shrapnel came up through the bottom of the aircraft, striking his parachute harness and ricocheting out the side of the aircraft just below the pilot's window. The Halifax carried only one pilot. Had Harold been seriously wounded or killed, his crew would have had little choice except to abandon their aircraft over enemy territory.
One of my flights was in Munster, Germany, when a piece of flak came through the belly of the aircraft, came up by my shoulder, cut the parachute strap, and went out through the cupola top of Willie the Wolf. I shall always remember that, and especially my crew that didn't know how to fly.
3 weeks after the cessation of hostilities on June 2nd, 1945, Harold Curl would once again fly Willie the Wolf.
I had the opportunity to take Willie the Wolf for its last flight. It was a good day, but a sad day in that it's the last time that Willie the Wolf ever flew. I flew it to a small aerodrome near York called Dalton. There it was stripped of its parts, bulldozed and burned. What a sad day, what a sad ending to an aircraft which had done so much.
Unlike thousands of Canadian airmen, soldiers, and sailors, Harold Curl chose to stay in Europe following the end of the war. From 432 Squadron, Harold transferred to 424 Squadron, flying Lancaster aircraft on low-level patrols over Allied-occupied Germany, including the Ruhr Valley, Cologne, and other cities. In the fall of 1945, Flying Officer Curl joined 437 Squadron, flying Dakota transport aircraft carrying mail, freight, and passengers on routes that included Brussels, Hamburg, Prague, Naples, Copenhagen, and Berlin. In order to help bring closure to his family over the loss of their son and brother Eldon 2 years earlier, Harold Curl knew he would have to go to Berlin. His journey of discovery began at Allied Supreme Headquarters, where he met a Colonel McQueen. While willing to assist, McQueen recognized he had no authority outside his own chain of command, so he suggested Harold meet with Canadian Army Lieutenant General Maurice Pope, head of the Canadian military mission in Berlin. After hearing of Harold's determination to enter the Soviet-occupied zone of Germany to find his brother, General Pope gave approval, but not in writing. That was left up to Colonel McQueen, who, along with his secretary, Alla Jacobs, worked with Harold to script and type a letter in Russian, which he signed and affixed an official-looking stamp in red ink. Nearly a year after the end of the war in Europe, armed only with a bogus letter and having been provided with an RAF staff car, a driver and translator, Flying Officer Curl crossed through the Brandenburg Gate. Based on information provided to his family by the International Red Cross following the downing of Eldon's aircraft, Harold headed for the Reichenwald area of Soviet-occupied East Germany and the small farming community of Buck, the crash site of Lancaster EQP P for Peter. Ravished by years of war, the German countryside was still considered unsettled and dangerous. It was not long before Harold encountered a Soviet Army patrol, which stopped the car and demanded identification. When none of the soldiers could read the letter presented to them, Harold was taken to a Russian captain who grasped the situation and, because of the official-looking nature of the letter, gave the group permission to travel on to Buck. The arrival of Canadian airmen was bound to create interest. Determined to find his brother, Harold went to a local gasthouse where he met Karl Koenig, a farmer from the area. Koenig had seen the burning Lancaster, went to the crash site, and discovered the bodies of 4 of the crew, including Eldon Curl, and buried them near where their aircraft fell. The remains of a 5th crew member was found 3 weeks after the crash and buried with his comrades. Koenig erected crosses at the site, but was forced to remove them before the war's end. He continued to tend the site for the last months of the war and was still doing so in May 1946. Harold Curl had reached his objective. On visiting the common gravesite with Carl Koenig, Harold spent a few moments in silent recollection and prayer, came to attention, and saluted the resting place of his fallen brother. 3 of the crew of EQP, P for Peter, were never found. Following the end of the Second World War, the bodies of Eldon and 4 of his crew were moved to Charlottenburg Commonwealth Cemetery in Berlin. Today, simple granite headstones mark their final resting place. Flight Lieutenant Eldon Easton Curl, DFC, is far from Cardston, Alberta, but remains connected to his family through the efforts of his brother, Harold Curl. They are, to this day, brothers in arms.
It's a short walk, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
memory of those who gave their lives in the First World War, 1914 to 1918. Private Booth, Randall C. Sergeant Briggs, Henry C. Corporal Broadbent, Charles N. Private Cumming-Singer, George. Sergeant Devonish, Horace J. Lieutenant Dower, Alexander G. Private Gales, Alfred. Private Gocher, William. Private Gooding, Cyril A. Private Jackman, Arthur C. Private Jensen, Arthur W. Private Levitt, William H. Lieutenant Mountain Horse, Albert C. Private Roberts, John W. Private Sibley, William. Private Sorensen, Norval A. Lieutenant Thurber, Sidney W. Private Woodward, William. Second World War, 1939 to 1945. Private Adamson, Ray. Leading aircraft crew, 80, George C. Leading aircraft crew, Andrus Benjamin M. Corporal Asplund, Bernard A. Flight Sergeant Beezer, Mark A. Pilot Officer Billingsley, Forrest D. Flight Sergeant Blackmore, Winston W. Gunner Bowie, Walter R. Sergeant First Class Braca, Melvin G. Sergeant Bunnage, Elvin M. Flight Officer Cahoon, Grant A. Sergeant Caldwell, Eldon H. Corporal Christie, Raymond B. Flight Officer Christie, Richard M. Flight Sergeant Crabtree, Edmund C. Gunner Hurlis, Franklin B. Private Davidson, Lauren D. Sergeant Davies, Arthur C. Warrant Officer Class 2, Davies, Lawrence W. Flight Officer Forsyth, Thomas R. Corporal Franklin, Merton B. Private Goebel, Martin E. Pilot Officer Hagan, Elmer J. Pilot Officer Hansen, Ezra M. Pilot Officer Hansen, Milton W. Gunner Harwood, Lawrence A. Flight Officer Haslam, Charles B. Flight Officer Henderson, Paul W. Pilot Officer Henningberg, Frederick H. Flight Sergeant Holland, Lloyd E. Flight Lieutenant Curl, Eldon E. DNC. Warrant Officer Second Class Law, Joseph F. Pilot Officer Levitt, Douglas T. Private Lightfoot, George L. Private First Class Libert, Charles Purplehart. Pilot Officer Libert, Dwayne E. Flight Officer Matkin, Merlin L. Bombardier Matkin, Philip K. Sergeant McMurray, Leslie J. Sergeant Marman, Peter J. M. Rifleman Rawlings, George W. Pilot Officer Robinson, Dallas R. Private Schufert, Leslie. Sapper Shattuck, George H. Flight Officer Sheen, Robert J. Flight Sergeant Thomas, Seth M. Sergeant Tyson, George P. Lance Corporal Whidden, Augustus W. Bombardier Wiley, John W. Flight Officer Wolf, Devon.
In Flanders Fields by John McLean. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep. The poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Hooray! Let's end.